Hello, and welcome to Unity of Fredericksburg. My name is Andrea, and I am pleased to welcome all of you to the Unity of Fredericksburg weekly online experience. At Unity of Fredericksburg, we are advancing the movement of spiritual awakening and transformation through unity, a positive path for spiritual living. We thank those of you watching on YouTube, live or later, and invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you are able to attend, we encourage you to join us in the Zoom community room for the full Sunday morning experience, including music, prayer, and connection. Our weekly newsletter includes the Sunday service link, and you can subscribe to receive that on our website at uofva.org. For everyone local to Central Virginia, Unity of Fredericksburg offers a variety of fun and enriching in-person gatherings every month. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter at uofva.org for all the details. Our message today comes from our minister, Reverend Cheryl Fair. And here's Reverend Cheryl.
Thanks, Andrea, and welcome everyone who is in the Zoom room with me right now. Those of you watching on YouTube, whether you're watching now or later, we appreciate you being present and showing up to be a part of Unity of Fredericksburg. Our broadcast date today is Sunday, February the 16th. Tomorrow, February the 17th, is a holiday here in the US. It is President's Day. President's Day was established in 1885 in recognition of President George Washington's birthday, and then later it also included honoring President Abraham Lincoln's birthday. And these days, it's a day for us to honor all American presidents. Sometimes that's easier than others, but President's Day. Here's a quote from one of our previous presidents, John Quincy Adams. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. And did you also know that February 17th is known as Random Acts of Kindness Day, which was first started in Denver, Colorado in 1995 by a small nonprofit. And of course, Random Acts of Kindness Day is all about making kindness a regular part of daily life. So think about that as you go about your day tomorrow. Here's a quote from the Dalai Lama to line up with that. As soon as I wake up every morning, I thank God for another day. I remember the importance of kindness and compassion, wishing good for others. I remember that everything is interrelated. So, today is the third Sunday of our journey through the season for nonviolence, which is based on the lives and the work and the philosophies of Mahatma Gandhi and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The purpose of the season for nonviolence is to demonstrate that nonviolence can heal, transform, and empower communities, and to encourage people to focus their words and deeds on creating a culture of nonviolence. So here at Unity of Fredericksburg, we are advancing the movement of spiritual awakening and transformation through unity. So as we go through this season, we will be looking at different aspects of nonviolence from the aspect of the divine nature, the individual consciousness, our interpersonal relationships, and our communities. So, in order for us to truly practice nonviolence, it's necessary for us to cultivate a habit of being aware of this energy that some of us like to call God or the universe or divine love in the present moment. And today we are looking way back in the past for a perfect example of how to do this and a person who did this, all the way back to the 1600s. We're looking at the practice of the presence of God. And this is an approach to spiritual practice that's attributed to a man known as Brother Lawrence. So his full religious name was Brother Lawrence of the Resurrection. And he was a French Catholic religious brother who served at a Carmelite monastery in Paris. His birth name was Nicholas Herman, and he was born in the year 1614 in a region of modern day France known as Lorraine. And his parents were peasants. So as he, aged and started becoming a teenager, there wasn't enough food to go around. So he joined the army, which joining the army meant that he had a guaranteed place to sleep, even if it was on the ground. He had, a bedroll, and he got food, and he got a small stipend. So he was in the army. He fought in a war called the 30 Years' War. He was taken hostage at one point. He experienced all of the horrors that one might imagine come along with battle in the 1600s. So eventually he was injured. He returned to his parents' house for a while. Once he was better, he took employment as a footman, and he describes himself at that time as a great awkward fellow who broke everything. So just imagine kind of a big, rough, soldier looking fellow with some scars and all of that stuff, who was just, so his employment was as a footman. Um, his heart's dream was to become a religious brother. And at age 26, he did that when he joined the Carmelite Priory in Paris as a lay brother. And that's when he took the religious name Brother Lawrence of the Resurrection. So at the Priory, his initial assignment, because everyone has to work, right? Everyone has to work to keep the place going. And his assignment was to work in the kitchen as an aide in the kitchen. And eventually he had a wound in his leg that made it too difficult for him to stand and do the work in the kitchen. So after quite a few years in the kitchen, he was reassigned to the task of repairing sandals. So this is the kind of activities that Brother Lawrence was doing. His sense of humor and the integrity of character that he had attracted people to him for spiritual guidance. And he was well known for having a profoundly peaceful demeanor. So his thoughts about what he described as his practice of the presence of God was documented by a fellow clergyman who's named as Monsieur Beaufort, who wrote this about Brother Lawrence. Lawrence was open, eliciting confidence, letting you feel you could tell him anything. Once you got past the rough exterior, you discovered unusual wisdom, a freedom beyond the reach of the ordinary lay brother. So Monsieur Beaufort, he took notes on his conversations with Brother Lawrence. So we have those to refer to. And then there are also a small collection of letters from Brother Lawrence where he talks about his practice. And those have been published. My book, my little thin book, looks like this. And I'm sure there's lots of other versions. It was originally published in this little collection in the late 1800s. So I want to start off as we learn about the practice of the presence of God. I want to start by reading a little bit from this book. And this is at the very beginning, where Monsieur Beaufort is first sitting down and talking with Brother Lawrence about how he became aware of this energy that we call God. So here we go. The first time I saw Brother Lawrence was upon the 3rd of August, 1666. He told me that God had done him a singular favor in his conversion at the age of 18, that in the winter, seeing a tree stripped of its leaves, and considering that within a little time the leaves would be renewed, and after that the flowers and fruit appear, he received a high view of the providence and power of God, which has never since been effaced from his soul. That this view had perfectly set him loose from the world and kindled in him such a love for God that he could not tell whether it had been increased in the more than 40 years he had lived since. So this might be described, this experience that Brother Lawrence had at age 18. So he was probably in the army at that point. This, you might describe this as a mystical experience, right? One of those experiences that just takes your breath away when you have a realization of the depth and the expanse of the energy that we call God or the universe, however it is that you like to call it. A mystical experience. You know how I am with words, my friends. I like to look things up and say, what is it that we mean by that? So here's a definition that AI provided for me. A mystical experience is a profound, often transformative state of consciousness where an individual feels a direct connection to a higher power, ultimate reality, or the universe. And within pretty much all religious practices, there are mystical traditions. So imagine how it might have been for young Nicholas Herman, likely on a march with the army and seeing just a wintered tree by the side of the road with just like, a brown leaf hanging off. This is a sight that here in the US in the winter you could see any day walking outside, right? But in that moment, him realizing the potential for life that is held within that and having that sense of all that is being present in potential in something very common that appears to be without life. So a really magical thing. Here's a quote that from one of Brother Lawrence's letters that he wrote years later, when he was talking about prayer and kind of his ongoing practice of prayer. A little lifting of the heart suffices, a little remembrance of God, one act of inward worship, though upon a march with a sword in hand, are prayers. So think about that moment that he experienced. Have you ever had a moment like that in your life? What you might describe as a mystical experience. A lot of us have, right? So, what Brother Lawrence did after that moment is that he developed a practice of his own to try to stay in that energy and create that energy of being in direct contact and continue that on an ongoing basis. So he talked frequently about being in constant conversation with the divine. So I will be reading you plenty of quotes today. And I just want to preface it by Brother Lawrence's language. He talks about God as if God is, kind of present as a separate entity. So, and he uses the third person and he uses the pronouns he and him. So we know that in unity, we not only have plenty of room for lots of different ways to talk about the divine. We generally do not talk about the divine in an anthropomorphized way, as in we don't talk about it as if the universe is a him. But Brother Lawrence does. So I just ask you to sort of set aside any quibbles your brain might have about that. Let's get a quote here that's from the notes of Monsieur Beaufort talking about Brother Lawrence. He said that we should establish ourselves in a sense of God's presence by continually conversing with him. That it was a shameful thing to quit this conversation to think of trifles and fooleries, that we should feed and nourish our souls with high notions of God, which would yield us great joy in being devoted. So, this is a practice of constantly being in conversation with the divine, constantly being aware, bringing ourselves to an awareness of the wonders of creation, no matter what's going on in our daily life. So Brother Lawrence did not think of prayer as something that was like something you did at a particular time of day in a particular way. He talked about it as something that happened all the time. So here's a one quote from Brother Lawrence. It is a great delusion to think that the times of prayer ought to differ from other times. And here's another quote, but related. The time of business does not with me differ from the time of prayer. And in the noise and clatter of my kitchen, while several persons are at the same time calling for different things, I possess God in as great tranquility as if I were upon my knees at the Blessed Sacrament. Isn't that a lovely image that, can you imagine yourself in whatever kind of crazy moments your day might have, whether it's in traffic or at home or at work or whatever. Can you imagine like being in that conversation with the divine so deeply that you can hold that tranquility no matter what's going on outside? How would that work for you? How would it be to be practicing the presence of God while in the midst of your busiest moments? Would it be difficult to maintain? Now, Brother Lawrence had to work at developing this practice, right? So, and here is a prayer that he would do. He had a prayer that he would use to sort of prepare himself to remain in touch when he got distracted, as we all do, right? So here's a prayer that he wrote in one of his letters. I beseech thee. Now he's talking to his version of God, an outer God. I beseech thee to grant me grace to continue in thy presence. And to this end do thou prosper me with thy assistance. Receive all my works and possess all my affections. So essentially, this was his version of an affirmation to prepare himself to, like, okay, we're going into the kitchen now. It's going to be a crazy day. Like, let me prepare myself. And he also experienced, just like all of us, moments when our minds wander, when we get caught up in all the stuff happening out there. So here's another quote. We must serve God in a holy freedom. We must do our business faithfully without trouble or disquiet, recalling our mind to God mildly with tranquility as often as we find it wandering from him. So here he is saying, being gentle with yourself. When you find yourself getting caught up with what's on the news or what the current worry of the day is, bring yourself back to center gently. He says mildly, with tranquility. Anytime you find it wandering, just come back, love. Come back, beloved. Let's get back in conversation with divinity. He described this ongoing prayer consciousness in this way, or Monsieur Beaufort commented on it. His prayer time was nothing else but a sense of the presence of God. His soul being at that time insensible to everything but divine love. So there weren't particular rituals he was doing. There weren't particular words or anything like that. It was nothing but a sense of the presence of God and being insensible to everything but divine love. So what do you think? Are you willing to give it a try? Are you willing to give a try to this practice? Now, I think gratitude is probably a really good way to get into that, right? To be grateful. We'll talk about that a little bit more here, and just have that awareness of all that is in everything that you are encountering. Now, one of the things that's lovely and charming about the teachings of Brother Lawrence is that he addresses things like daily living and doing chores. So, um, he addresses how we might practice the presence in the midst of doing our household stuff. Now, as I mentioned earlier, his first assignment at the Priory was in the kitchen, and he did not like it, my friends. Did not like it. Here's the quote from Monsieur Beaufort. In his business in the kitchen, and then parenthetically it says, to which he had naturally a great aversion. And the quote goes on, having accustomed himself to do everything there for the love of God, and with prayer upon all occasions, he had found everything easy during the 15 years that he found himself employed there. So, can you imagine that? Doing your chores, whatever they are, for the love of God. And that if you are truly engaged in that, then all of a sudden the chore becomes easy. I all of a sudden had kind of an image of Mary Poppins, but I won't go there. So let's just practice. So just imagine for yourself right now, whatever your most dreaded household chore is, whether that's indoors, outdoors, whatever it is, that thing that you just don't like doing. So for me, my example would be cleaning bathrooms, like scrubbing toilets and sinks and stuff. I just, it's difficult physically for me and all kinds of stuff. So you imagine whatever you use, but it helps us to practice gratitude to help us get into this practicing the presence. All right. So first, kind of take a breath. Let's get into the present moment because practicing the presence, my friends, is all about being in the present moment, right? So we want to get in a gratitude frame of mind. So for me, when contemplating the notion of cleaning the bathroom, um, I need to get into a grateful frame of mind. Grateful for the fact that I live in a home with walls, that even though it's raining outside, things are dry and safe in here. Look at this. I have indoor plumbing. Certainly, Brother Lawrence didn't have indoor plumbing. He would have to, with the other people in the kitchen, go and get the water and bring it in. Who knows how long that would take? I've got clean running water. Now, here in Richmond, we recently had an incident where we not only didn't have clean water, we didn't have running water. So we've been very reminded in Richmond of what a blessing that is. And just think of all the amazing human ingenuity and divine wisdom that makes all this home, this plumbing. And let's look at the water. Water, which is a part of the earth, which I like to think of as kind of our collaborative partner in this human life, providing this water, which is necessary for our lives. Feel the love for all of that, for the abundance of all of that. That helps prepare me. It's kind of like my preparation so that I can carry that into this time of doing this chore and do it for the love of all that is. Now, here's a wonderful quote from Brother Lawrence when he's talking about how the wonders of the universe are just shared so abundantly. He starts off by saying, the king, and of course, he's talking about God, the king, full of mercy and goodness, very far from chastising me, embraces me with love, makes me eat at his table, serves me with his own hands, gives me the key to all his treasures. So just take a moment right now, think about whatever your dreaded chore is, my friends, and think about how you might practice being grateful. Brother Lawrence did this every day while working in the kitchen. Here's a quote about him. The most excellent way he had found of going to God was that of doing our common business purely for the love of God. Now, Brother Lawrence experienced hard times, just like all of us do, times of pain, times of sorrow, and he talked about maintaining this practice of the presence in troubled times. His perspective was the worst that could happen to him was to lose that sense of God, which he had enjoyed for so long. And so he feared nothing because he was so focused on being in that practice. He wasn't worried about what was going on with his leg or what was going on with this or that. So you can use this practice to help yourself through, and he would use it to kind of affirm that the strength that he needed was present, to affirm that everything that he needed was, again, he would think about God and sitting at God's table and all the things that he required being provided. So next time you're having a hard time, think about that. Now, for many of us, our brains might be hopping up and wanting to chatter with us about all kinds of, well, that would work except for when this, I just always get distracted, all of this. So I want to just quickly bring up another reference. So I was reading an Enneagram book, as I often do, The Wisdom of the Enneagram, and this is a section on that from that book about the spirituality of the Enneagram, and it talks about the personality. Of course, our ego, our personality is going to want to get into our practice and have excuses, right? So here's a little section from this book, The Wisdom of the Enneagram. Um, Another major excuse for postponing inner work is due to the fact that our personality presents us with all sorts of conditions and requirements that interfere with our regular practice. Examples being, I'll get serious about meditating as soon as I get all the other problems in my life worked out. When the temperature is exactly right, or when there's no noise, or when everyone's leaving me in peace. So this is just an example of how our brains, our ego, our personality will want to interfere. Right? It will have all kinds of reasons why, oh, you can't do that right now because you have to pay attention to this. But one of the key things about practicing the presence is being present in the body, here and now. Again, referencing this wisdom of the Enneagram, the body is always here in the present moment. So we talked about gratitude as a way of helping us to enter into this kind of practice. Another thing that can help us is being present in the body, not in our heads, which wants to be spending all kinds of energy making plans for what might go wrong, not in our hearts, which might be thinking about, oh, things that we feel bad about, things, stories and things like that, but right here in the body. So the breath. So very often in our prayer time, in our meditation time, which we will begin in another minute or so, we begin with a breath. And the intention there is to bring your focus into the body, into the here and now, and be still. And use that as a way of cultivating what Brother Lawrence talked about as an ongoing conversation, being in conversation with the divine through all of our activities. And he talked frequently about what satisfaction and joy he felt in that process. Um, and I'm kind of skipping ahead because I'm running really long today. So I just want to give you a couple more things before we go into our time of meditation. Brother Lawrence did talk about, so this business that I shared with you from the wisdom of the Enneagram, about how our brains, our personality can interfere with this connection, with this conversation. And he said that we would hinder the flow of good, but that the more that we are present in that practice and joyful, that God finds a soul penetrated with a lively faith and pours into it his graces and favors. So I invite you as you go into your week as a way of tapping into this season of nonviolence that we're in to give it a try. Here's one of my favorite quotes from Brother Lawrence. There is not in the world a kind of life more sweet and delightful than that of a continual conversation with God. So, what do you have to lose, my friends? If it doesn't work, you can always take that and put it up on the shelf of your mind. Maybe you'll think about it later. Try it another day. But for now, and here's the last quote before we go into our time of meditation from Brother Lawrence: we must make our heart a spiritual temple wherein to adore him incessantly. So let's all take a deep breath together. Coming to the present moment, just feeling that breath moving in and out of the body, becoming more and more aware of the presence, one presence and one power. As we do so, let's play in our imagination for a moment. Just imagine how Brother Lawrence would have used all of the practices that have been a part of the season for nonviolence in the last week. So think about how Brother Lawrence would have played with a practice of contemplation. Can you imagine that? How would Brother Lawrence have showed up with a practice of discipline? Does it take some discipline to practice the presence? How about creativity, my friends? Brother Lawrence was in a constant process of co-creation with the universe. How about humility? Humility is quieting those ego impulses and being present with all that is. And Brother Lawrence certainly would have been practicing reverence. Just being in touch with the wonder, the awe of divinity and all its expressions. Here's another practice from this past week. How did Brother Lawrence show up with leadership? Certainly, this practice of the presence is not a follower. It's not following what other people tell us to do. It leads, and as we practice it, we are leading. And the last practice from this past week, integrity. Committing to a practice, being in that practice. Imagine Brother Lawrence doing that. And now, as we move into the silence, I'd like for you to allow space for you to do all of these things. So let's move into a few moments in the silence together right now. And as we once again return our awareness to the here and now, noticing the movement of the breath in and out of the body, being aware of our body right here, right now, in the present moment. We are grateful. And let's close our time of meditation with an affirmation. So I'll say it once and then you can repeat it with me a couple times at home, okay? I joyfully practice the presence of God and I am grateful. Say it with me, friends. I joyfully practice the presence of God and I am grateful. Let's do it one more time with some excitement, some vim and vigor, if you will. Here we go. I joyfully practice the presence of God, and I am grateful. I am grateful for the opportunity to be here with you, my friends. Thank you so much for showing up to be here with me, whether you're here now or later. It all works. That's it for me, and I'm going to hand it back to our friend Andrea to finish things out.
Thanks for watching the weekly broadcast from Unity of Fredericksburg. Visit our website at uofva.org to learn more about our mission of spiritual awakening and transformation, and support our ministry with your financial donation.